Welcome back to Edge of Reason. This season, we're asking how artists engage with history, drawing from the past to challenge, reinterpret, and reshape the present. Through themes like metamorphosis, resistance, and the world within, we'll explore how creative expression transcends time, shapes cultural memory, and pushes the boundary of artistic evolution. We begin with metamorphosis. What does it mean to become oneself? Not in a single moment, but as an ongoing unraveling of inherited roles. And how does art open pathways to confrontation, reinvention, and renewal? These are some of the questions we'll explore on Edge of Reason. A limited series podcast produced by Atlantic Rethink, the Atlantic's creative marketing studio, in partnership with Hauser Wirth, a home to visionary modern and contemporary artists. Today, we meet the painter Uman and the author Nicole Dennis-Benn. Their work is about restless recreation, personal evolution, and the joys and struggles of transformation and metamorphosis. First, let's meet the visionary artist Uman, whose big, vibrant paintings transport viewers into beautiful worlds of memory, movement, and spirit. Born in Somalia and raised in Kenya, Uman now lives and works in upstate New York. Her journey spans continents, and her work reflects the expansive, border-crossing life she's led. In works like My Insides Are Like Your Insides, or Zigzag Rolled on a Blunt, she blends abstraction and figuration with calligraphy, geometry, and kaleidoscopic color. Her paintings speak to becoming, not as a linear journey, but as a continuous act of navigation. Uman, we're so happy to have you here on Edge of Reason.
Thanks for having me.
So you've lived quite an amazing, eventful life, and it really shows in the powerful works that you make. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
My journey, I was born in Somalia in the 80s. I ended up in Kenya full-time once the war began. And then I moved with my older sister to Denmark. We are very nomadic people. And sometimes it's moving because sometimes you have no choice but to move. Most of us thought that we would be sent overseas, and that would be the answer to changing your circumstances and having a better life.
And then you chose to move to the US?
I really wanted to come to New York, and it was a place where I could disappear because I felt like I was under constant surveillance by family, and I wanted to escape that. I wanted to be myself. I come from a very conservative family. I wasn't able to live fully as myself, even in Europe. So I decided this is the best thing to do, which is to come to New York and completely disappear.
I want to come back to maybe that in a little bit. One of the things I wanted to ask you, though, is your work seems to reflect this constant motion, like you've just described, and this constant sense of change. So I'm wondering, when you hear the word metamorphosis, what does that bring up for you?
It's a daily practice, I think, for me to reinvent yourself, and not even in a drastic way, but subtle ways to make yourself a better person or to change certain habits and to evolve creatively. So metamorphosis happens every single day for me. And I think I've learned to shapeshift over my whole life because I had to. And now it's more of I need to for my own self, not because of anyone else.
That's beautiful. Let's now welcome Nicole Dennis-Benn, the Jamaican-born author who tells stories of transformation through migration, identity, and self-discovery. She is a 2-time Lambda Award-winning author for her debut novel, Here Comes the Sun, and her second novel, Patsy. Her books follow protagonists navigating through sexuality and motherhood, who are caught in environments hostile to change and who must shed their inherited roles on their journeys to becoming themselves. Nicole, we're so glad to have you on Edge of Reason.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nicole, you're kind of on a classic immigrant path. This is something that I recognize. At one point, you were studying to become a doctor. So, how did you become a writer? How did you get into the artist life?
Well, I've always been a writer. It's just that because of my culture and the resistance towards that, because coming from working class Jamaican culture, it's like, well, everybody has to be that doctor or lawyer or engineer, those brand name careers that they think can actually help us to be upwardly mobile. That was a dream of my parents. And I also kind of inhabited that dream as well, where I'm like, okay, I need to study hard. I need to get into a certain school and I need to be that doctor so that I can buy them a nice big house on the hill in Upper St. Andrew, Jamaica. And after a while, though, I realized that's really not my passion. I was writing in secret. I came alive through words. I also came of age during the spoken word era. So, you had the New York Poetry Cafe, you had Def Jam Poetry on HBO. And I was like looking at those folks going like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. Like, how do I get there? But not having the courage to do so. So still following that path of medicine until graduate school, where I got my master's in public health at University of Michigan. And I remember saying to myself, oh, this is on the path to the PhD. Everyone was proud of me. But then like what Uman said, there was a point in my life where I'm like, it's just boring. I was looking around. It wasn't anything to complain about, but it was not anything to write home about. And New York was calling me. Because when I first came to America, I came through Hempstead, Long Island. This time around, I wanted to go to New York, New York. Like I wanted to go to the big city. And so from Michigan, I ended up booking a trip. Didn't know where I was going to live. Ended up in a basement in Sunset Park with 4 other girls. And we were all trying to make it in some way. But still, I didn't know how to tell my family that this is something that I wanted to pursue. So I still worked in the health field. And then I met my wife, who said to me one day, I noticed that you're writing a lot. And she asked me, so are you a writer or are you on the path of public health? Because she was in her doctoral program at the time. And it was that same program that I was trying to apply to get my doctoral degree as well. And she said, I don't know if you're cut out for this if you're not passionate about it. And she was right. And then she asked me, have you ever heard of an MFA program? I had to do research once more. And I said, oh, this is what I really want to do. I can actually study writing and actually get paid for it, And so I went ahead, applied and got in, and then of course, surrounded myself with a lot more of the people who actually valued me as an artist. And I came alive then. I feel like there was a hustle that I had since coming to America that I never lost. And so I really wanted to push my way out of that mentality where, oh no, daddy's going to be disappointed. Oh, mommy's going to be disappointed. Oh, what if I never publish a book? Lots of rejection in the art world. Oh man, and I cried a lot. And ultimately, when my first book got published, Here Comes the Sun, that was so amazing for me, given that I was proud of it. And ultimately, my parents came around. They were able to say to me, oh, yeah, now we understand. And, given I had to have the book first in front of them, but I've forgiven them for that. The reason, too, I feel like why they were so scared was they wanted me to survive. They wanted me to survive in my new country. And so I think that was really where the anxiety came from. But now I'm living that, and I'm happy that I took that step.
Uman, as Nicole was talking, I saw you nodding your head a lot. I'm wondering what some of the things Nicole said, what they brought up for you.
I was thinking about how parents have these expectations, but at the same time, these expectations are very hard when you are trying to find yourself, but at the same time have to appease these people.
Yeah, it's true. And also being a parent myself, I see it, I feel it, I sense it. So trying to, as a parent, seeing how that anxiety that you can give your child based on your own wants and fears, how that can prevent them from growing their own wings or being the human beings that we want them to be in the world, in terms of confidence. Another thing too that I wanted to mention in terms of my journey to New York City or to myself is loving myself. For a long time, I was not able to accept me. Not only what my parents wanted of me, but also my sexuality. I knew I was gay in Jamaica. I knew I was attracted to women. And that was something that I hid for a very long time. And I felt like I was overcompensating for that with the straight A's and oh, I need to be a doctor then. So that, oh, what if they find out if I'm a doctor, they wouldn't mind because I could provide the financial aid that they don't ask those questions. So I think it was like one whole ball of denial upon denial. I felt trapped in terms of the conversation with Metamorphosis. I was not growing. I felt like I was trapped in that denial.
Uman, what role did the art making play in helping you transform into the person that you wanted to become?
So I was painting throughout my life. I didn't consider it art or anything until I came to New York and I was in my 20s, and then started to actually say, oh, yeah, I should make some art. I had an opportunity to go to school, but I wasn't so great. And so I don't have an education. And so I had to be persistent and resistant to this insider art world. It helped me have some confidence. Like Nicole said, loving yourself is very important, but I didn't love myself. I think I felt this need to find something that would give me a superpower. I would do paintings for people, and someone said, oh, you do art because it gives you attention. I said, that's right. if that's what gives me attention, I'm going to keep doing it. But it did kind of hurt hearing that, because I felt like I was being an honest person as an artist. You have to create from the deepest part of your core.
I agree. I mean, I love what you just said, Uman. And that was actually really honest as well. I feel like a lot of us creators, we have always felt so unseen. Even when I was reading books, I never saw myself in books, never heard myself in books, my accent, anything. It was always reading books by British white authors like Shakespeare, and we had to memorize those books to pass our CXC exams back home. And I actually felt invisible, so I also, like you, Uman, I started creating because I wanted to be seen as well. I actually wanted to see myself, hear myself, and people to see me and hear me. And so I felt like, for me, my writing was that was my gift to the world. And it's so hard. You have to have some kind of access or some kind of padding to even find the courage to pursue that. Because, yeah, I wonder to myself, what if I didn't get that push from my wife? Or what if I never thought, oh my gosh, I could really do this? Then I probably would have still been sitting at some desk somewhere doing some research I care nothing about and still invisible. So I do see what you're saying, and I actually do know people right now who are talented writers, talented artists, and they're not here. They did not have that push. They did not feel like they had that padding to take off. And so I want to honor that. I want to also bring them in a conversation like this one, because it's hard. It's really hard to launch yourself that way without the support. But I'm so happy that I was able to do it and Uman was able to do it. And yeah, no, we are seen. People know our works. They talk about it. They talk about us, and so we're here. And thinking back to that 25-year-old girl who landed in Brooklyn, and if I could say now, wow, look at you now. So yeah, I want to, that's why I love this podcast. I'm honoring that journey, that metamorphosis that happened.
I think the most important people are the people who push you to do your work and to be yourself or to live a certain way. And I think it doesn't really have to be financial. I have friends who I met when I arrived, and I still have them. And these people are very important to me, and they pushed me into becoming where I am.
As I'm listening to you, I'm struck by the courage you both had to have in order to set out on these journeys that you set out for yourselves. But I'm also struck by the risks inherent in these journeys. As you've moved through these transformations, has fear ever come up? Maybe especially like fear of what you might discover about yourselves? Has painting or writing, has it ever revealed something to you that you maybe didn't want to face?
Fear is such a thing in my life that everything I do, every transformation, every risk you take comes with a certain level of fear. I think it's very important to have fear. I still feel like I could have a show that is terrible. I have those fears of not making good work and not achieving the success that I once had. I personally feel like I've not done my best work, and I often strive for that. And I want to evolve to that place where I'm completely satisfied with the work.
Oof. I have so many feelings about this one because, I was listening to one earlier with the fear that never leaves. That fear, that doubt, I feel like as an artist, it never leaves. Even 2 books out, I'm working on the third novel, and it's the same doubt, the same fear that I've experienced over and over again. Every time I start something new, it's like starting from scratch. Like I've never had success. I've never had anything. And it's just me and a blank page once more. And I feel like in order to begin, I have to like try to shut out the doubt, shut out the fear, and say, okay, I can do this. It's okay. I'm only in competition with myself here. Because I feel like with a creative process, you have to really give way to the work itself. And, my characters are completely different people from me, situations completely different from mine in most cases. And I do find that the characters that I fear the most are the characters that open up the novel. And so going with those characters that I fear actually pays out at the end of the day. But having to remind myself that, and also the things that I end up learning about myself are usually through those characters. I started writing Patsy in 2012. It published in 2019. 2020 happened, the lockdown. But when I started Patsy, I was working through my own questions about motherhood, success. I honestly was not ready. And my culture, motherhood is like the thing that you had to strive to be. So when I sat down to write Patsy, my first question that came out was, but what if you're that woman who questions this? What if you're that woman who dares to say, I don't want this right now or ever? And that was how that character came out. But I feared her because I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I about to do with a character like this? Nobody's going to like her. But I had to work through that. I had to work through my own judgment of her. And also I had to work through the perceived or judgments of others that would come in on a character like Patsy. And I wrote it from deep within. So 2020 lockdown happened, and that's when I actually had my boys. Imagine that Patsy had helped me to evolve into that woman who I am now, who, oh my God, I could not imagine my life without my sons. But that journey that happened, I had to still honor that journey. And I'm still growing, I'm still evolving as a mother, still evolving as, okay, how can I be an artist and a mother? Things that men don't get asked, but still, I do think about those things. I definitely want to be transparent in that I do tend to work through a lot of stuff in my work. If there's a therapist listening to this podcast, they might be saying, oh, you also may need a little therapy as well, which I am getting. But as an artist, I still love the ability to work through stuff in my own work.
Mm-hmm. So you've both been talking about fear and how it shows up in the process of making and of becoming. And I think that really resonates. But I also found myself wondering about grief, because transformation is not just about becoming something new. It's also about leaving things behind, right? And some of that, sure, we want to shed, we've got to shed, like the boxes that people try to put us in. But sometimes in the process, maybe we end up losing things that we didn't expect to lose. And I guess I'm curious, in all the freedom that comes with art making and change, how do you carry and work with the grief of what's been lost?
Oof, that's a big one as well. I've lost a lot of friends. I've shed a lot. And I think it's just also understanding that life is about change. There are people who come around for a time and a season, and I honor that. And then I had to start looking within. There are things that I end up losing within myself. There were things that I had to grieve. I had to unlearn some of the patterns or things that I internalized without knowing I internalized it. For example, oh yeah, in order to be one of the best, then you can't be a parent. Like, who said that? Who made that rule? I think coming to terms with that grief is learning how to make the best out of where you're planted right now. And I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still having to remind myself and still having to work, knowing that I can never be complacent, but still knowing I can honor where I've been. And that grief is more like growing. I could call it the growing pains. That's always going to be there.
Uman, what's coming up for you as you're listening to Nicole?
I think about metamorphosis as more like becoming, but it's also about shedding that skin and letting things go. And obviously, I feel loss about many things, loss of the language I spoke and loss of people I've grown up with and people I've met along the way. And those things never leave you. But I also think when you grieve, you have freedom. Some freedom comes out of it. I used to say, don't look back, because that always causes us to think and dwell and just manufacture all these emotions. And I just like the idea that I grieve and I move on. And I just don't think that metamorphosis doesn't happen without grief. It happens together. You leave something behind, but you use that. And as far as making art, I cover things up and I go over things, I layer them, and I try to keep something from the past in there, whether it's a color or a shape or something.
I'm struck by this image of you putting something down and covering it up and maybe peeling it back and revealing as this really powerful metaphor for metamorphosis, actually. As you sort of move through this process, I mean, does that resonate for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't know how to articulate it. I think that it's quite difficult for me to answer.
I love that image as well of layering and peeling back. And I even feel that's what I do with my own work as well. But for some reason, just the visuals of this, how do you articulate that? But I think you had articulated it. It makes perfect sense.
And I was also thinking about, Nicole said earlier that you said that when you're writing, you sort of are working out all of these things. And that's how I am when I'm painting, and obviously covering things is a way of working through these things. And for me, if I don't paint for a certain amount of time, I get very sad and depressed. And,
me too.
And I think it's something that keeps you going for all creative people, whether it's writing or making music or painting. It's a daily practice, and I feel that they're constantly together, grief and evolution. You move on and you create something.
Yeah. As we talk about metamorphosis, my whole life, I was running away from a lot of things that was unresolved back home. And so I am now trying to kind of turning the pen even deeper inwards in terms of, Uman, you had mentioned not looking back, but I find myself looking back just to move forward. And I think that's what I'm doing now with this current project. One thing that was coming up for me while I was working on this was definitely that fear, that doubt, like, oh my goodness. But also there was that feeling of relief, like, oh, that's what it is. So knowing that I can actually create that and give it to the world through this character or three characters, the cost of running, are we truly free? Will we ever be free? Does freedom evolve? And so that's really the questions that I found myself asking with this current project that I'm working on.
Yeah. You're going back maybe for closure, and I also feel that's one of the things I need to deal with in order to move forward. I haven't been in Africa since the 90s over 30 years. So I want to go back, but I also have fear. But at the same time, I think sometimes maybe that is important to go back and look back for closure. And that also helps with growth and, turning into a butterfly.
Uman, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today on Edge of Reason. I'm Jeff Chang, and you've been listening to Edge of Reason. Join us next week as we sit down with Hauser Wirth artist Ange Smith and curator and scholar Zoe Widley to explore how the world within shapes their lives, their stories, and the worlds they create. If you've enjoyed what you've just heard, like and review us on Apple Podcasts and help spread the word about our series to other listeners like you.